Hi, I'm Rachel Abbasi. Welcome to the Recovery Daily podcast. As always, thanks for spending time with me. Hi, welcome to the Recovery Daily podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abbasi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. And today is, I don't know, an interesting topic. There are some days that I'm just like, wow, this is really inspiring. I don't know. Today's one of those days. So I wanted to talk about the difference between willingness and courage. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about what these look like in early recovery. What do they look like when you're a newcomer walking in to recovery? And then what do they look like when you're a new stroke survivor? And you're looking at these other people who are like 9 years into their stroke recovery, and what it looks like. I remember feeling just like I'm never gonna be able to do this. In both situations, in both sobriety and in stroke recovery. And here I am. And today I have people saying like how much courage I emanate, or whatever, and I'm just like, but that's not what it feels like. It doesn't feel like courage. I don't feel like a superhero or anything. Even though, like, when I'm looking at my peers in recovery, they look like superheroes. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. This morning, we were talking about faith. So this is Thursday, and in my Thursday morning meeting, we do a meditation. But before we do, we read the thought for the day from the Hazelden website. So it was a pretty heavy reading for the thought for the day today. And what I heard was about the the need for faith in recovery. And then I went on to talk about like understanding that we have human minds, and it's impossible for us to really have a full grasp of the universe and yada yada yada. I never say that, but we're gonna say it today. Yada yada yada. So what I wrote down when I was looking through this thought for the day was, what came first, faith or strength? Because it took something in order to build faith. And it certainly didn't feel like strength. So I immediately thought willingness. That's what it was, for sure. Willingness came before strength. And then from that willingness, the faith began to emerge. And that is where the strength then came from. So when I hear about people talking about finding strength in sobriety, I felt like everybody else had strength first. Like, oh, you were so brave. That's what we do. We look at other people and we think, well, they're so brave to go in there and do it. And but it was willingness. So then that made me think, well, what's the difference between willingness and courage? Because to other people, it looks like courage. But for me, it was simply turning off my quote unquote wanter that I always talk about and just doing it, doing what was suggested of me. Strength was never the starting point for me. Strength was something that was built over time. So, so what did willingness look like? Like, I really feel like willingness was that first building block, was the first block. And if I'm being completely honest, that first block, building block of willingness, it was just sitting alone by itself on the floor, and I'm just looking at it like, how am I going to build anything on top of this, you know? So what it looked like for me, willingness was showing up even though I was unsure and I was extremely uncomfortable. I was extremely nervous. Um, I had a shell around me, and I just opened my mouth anyway. I don't know what was guiding me. You know, there's people who say that God brought me to AA and AA brought me to God. And that's another one of those what came first things, because I don't know. It was desperation that was guiding me to do these things, because I had gotten to the point where if I don't do something, if I don't change something, then nothing's going to change and I'm going to die. And so I heard I was supposed to get a sponsor. So, without any confidence in the world, I stood after the meeting with this woman who, for some reason, looked really familiar to me. And we never did figure out why we looked familiar to each other. And I said, will you be my sponsor? Like, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even know what a sponsor was, but I said it because that's what I heard I was supposed to do. The suggestions that I heard I was supposed to do, I just did them, whether I wanted to or not. And I stayed there when I wanted to run out of the room. Like, after the meeting, I did not want to stay and talk to anybody, but I heard that that's what I was supposed to do. So I stood there. And when you stop drinking and you don't know what to do with your hands, that's what I was like. Do I put them in my pocket? Do I pick? I'm a big picker. What do I do? And so willingness created the movement without any certainty that went with it. Like, I don't know, but I'm here. I don't know what I'm doing, where I am, uh, but I'm here. So that willingness opened the door to everything. And faith was something that I didn't even, I could not even grasp in the first few years. Really, the faith journey, although my sobriety introduced me to faith, I did not necessarily lean very far into it until I had my stroke. I mean, I was leaning, I was praying and not knowing who I was praying to. That I heard somebody say once, the God I will never understand, or the God not of my understanding, or something like that. Meaning, I don't have to know exactly what my concept is. I just have to do the motions. So I did that. I did just that. I started getting after like 3 years of sobriety, I heard people talking about getting down on my knees to pray. And so I'm like, what if somebody walks in the room and sees me? So I would shut the door before I did it at night, so that, I mean, what, my 6-year-old didn't walk in, but I was embarrassed, which is silly now that I think back, but it's silly because I was willing to do it regardless of how silly it felt. And then from that, the confidence in what I was doing, even though I still didn't quite understand it, there was something happening. And that something was like I felt comfortable. When I got on my knees and I put my head in my hands beside my bed and I did my gratitude and I thanked God for my sobriety. And I said, Thy will be done, not mine. There was something that felt like comfort. It felt like I was releasing the need to control. It felt like I was ungrasping the nothingness of stuff that I was trying to control. You know, I was white knuckling life. So every night before I went to bed, it was like I was releasing it. And I was like, here, take it. Take it. I'm done trying to control everything that I cannot control. And it was like I could just relax before I went to bed. And that was really cool. And so it was like this strength emerged. It started to feel like comfort. It started to feel like a little bit of confidence. It started to feel like trust. And and I think outwardly it looked like strength. And that strength was a byproduct. It was not a prerequisite. It was a byproduct of the willingness that I started with. So this is interesting for me. This was the I see when I was looking at the difference between courage and willingness. So courage, I said this morning in my meeting, I feel like we should just trash the word courage because courage is something, all it is doing something despite fear. Um, but so this is interesting to me, and we'll see if I can articulate it. Courage for me is defined differently depending on whether you're the doer or the watcher. So, courage, if I'm looking at somebody else who has courage, they look brave, bold, and confident. If I'm the one who has courage, what I feel like is nervous, uncertain, and fearful. So, courage, I think its definition is really what it looks like. It looks like you are encapsulating these aspiring, you know, adjectives to while you're doing the thing, the scary thing. Willingness is openness, giving consent, and making yourself available to do the thing. So, courage looks strong, but can feel fearful, right? Can feel like it's full of fear. Willingness looks intimidating and often you feel weak when you're going in. Um, but how do these two relate? Willingness is courage without having any armor on. And courage is willingness in action. Like there's a real relationship between these two things, but they're not the same. So, what I feel really impacts willingness and courage is ego. Um, when I'm going in to do something that I'm afraid of, I may look courageous to somebody else who's watching me do it, but what I'm feeling on the inside is I should be stronger by now. I shouldn't look or I shouldn't feel so afraid right now. I don't want to look weak. I don't want to look nervous. Um, I wish I understood why I'm doing this before I do it. It's like a need to really convey something that looks it's like the need to convey that courage, to really meet the definition of courage. When ego comes in to meet willingness, um, ego just straight up blocks willingness, right? Because willingness requires me to put my ego aside altogether and let other people lead the way, other people guide me. Like, I need to admit complete defeat. Where is that from? You know, I need to accept help. I need to take a path that maybe I didn't design. So I think that we can be courageous with an ego, but I don't think that we can be willing with an ego, not fully willing. Um, so in early sobriety and in stroke recovery, I I think people who were long timers in sobriety and stroke recovery, I think that when they look at newcomers, they see the courage. I know that because I see it. I see when people are struggling and they show up anyway. And and that's courageous to me when I'm looking at them. They're not going to be able to see their own courage for possibly years to come. I I I see it now. I see my courage. I see the courage that it took for me to whew, for me to do all the things, to go to meetings, even if I wasn't going to speak. It's courageous to walk through those doors. And I remember walking through my first meeting doors and everybody was outside smoking. So, in order to walk in, I had to walk through all of the people who were standing outside smoking. And I was sat in my car and I was um, scared. Um, but I was willing. So I went in. And today I can look back at that version of me who was sitting in the car. Sorry, hold on a second. Boris, stop growling at me. You cannot get up here right now. I'm recording. No, go lay down. No, he's growling at me. It's silly. He wants to get up here and sit with me. That's why I keep moving around. So I'm taking up more space on this chair, and he can't think that he can come up here. Boris got a shower today, and Autumn did too. And so he's nice and clean. Yep. See, he's trying to come up here. You're interrupting, Boris. Okay, sorry. So going to meetings, even without needing to speak, that's willingness. Following the suggestions that were given to me, I remember being in detox, and the first time I came out of detox, I wasn't willing. I wasn't willing to follow the suggestions that I didn't believe in. And I didn't believe in much of anything. I went to some meetings, I think, I don't even remember. I think I went to meetings. But when got out of detox the second time, that's when I had made the decision that I was going to follow all suggestions because I tried it my way and it didn't work the first time. So that was willingness, willingness to stay sober today without knowing how I'm going to do it tomorrow. That's willingness. Um, letting my fellowship carry me when I couldn't carry myself. That's willingness. And then you come to find out, or at least I came to find out years later, that what that willingness was, like the willingness is the before, and the courage is looking back and seeing that willingness in action. That's what courage is. So I can look back now at how courageous I was to do it. But it just doesn't feel like it. Courage feels like willingness in the beginning. So, just revisiting what strength is. Um, Strength is, and this is how it feels for me, that strength is consistency. Strength is humility, even though it seems like those are polar opposites. Strength comes from humility. Strength is openness, not just opening yourself up for a second, but strength is consistently being open when you know it would be easier to shut down, when it would be easier to isolate. Like that is strength. Um, Strength is accumulated willingness over time. Strength is not knowing how things are going to go. It's not being fearless or overly confident or walking in with your head high. That's not strength. Strength is staying, Strength is staying. So when I think about my story and my experience in early sobriety and now looking back on it, like willingness was that building block that was sitting in the middle of the floor all by itself. And slowly, things like faith, strength, you know, began to be added to the building block so that my sobriety could be built on top of it. And I'm still building. After all this time, I'm still building. But the reason why I do the podcast is because I've realized that I shouldn't be just building alone. That if I can share my experience, if I can share how I developed these building blocks for myself, then maybe I can help another person. Just one person. That's all I want to do is help one person because there's too many people who die from this disease. And there's too many people who are suffering from a loss of identity after a stroke. And the mental unwellness and emotional challenges that go with trying to build your life, the new version of yourself after a stroke, is overwhelming. There are so many people out there that are struggling. And now that I don't have my full-time job anymore, This has become my full-time job. I couldn't silently fix my life. I needed to share my journey because what's the point? What's the point if I'm keeping all of the lessons to myself? So that's why I come here every day to share my lessons. That's it. I just come to share my lessons. And I'm so grateful for all of you who come to listen. And I'm always here to listen to your lessons or your experience. That's what community is for. So feel free to leave a response in the chat. Chat? What is it called? I don't know. In the comments. There we go. I've only been doing this for like 3 years. You'd think that I know what things are called by now, but feel free to add a comment and like, share, follow. If you are not on with me on Facebook, you can find me there as well, and Instagram and all kinds of stuff, and we can be BFFs. So thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.